Minister, at the onset, I just want to say that I'm very, very concerned over the rushed nature of this bill. It is a very, very important piece of legislation, but it is being rushed through. I also have serious concerns over the fact that there hasn't been enough engagement or collaboration with the farming organisations who have a number of concerns in regard to this particular bill. And that also concerns me because, it should be about listening to everybody and what everybody has to say in order to ensure that the legislation is got as right as it can be got, and that the legislation is robust and that it's fair. And I do think, and I would call on you to have further engagement with the farming organisations in the state, please, on this issue. We are all agreed on the need for a system of controls to protect our environment and to implement measures to control the abstraction of freshwater, surface and groundwater, and impoundment of fresh surface water. However, as you will be aware, there are serious concerns about certain provisions and sections of this bill, and indeed these have been raised by farming organisations such as the IFA in recent times. There are issues relating to compensation, to the perception that the bill grants excessive powers to the Minister, particularly with respect to the definition of licensing threshold and registration threshold. The IFA say that this in particular creates massive levels of uncertainty for farmers, and they need it addressed urgently, and that's why I'm asking you to spend more time, and indeed for government here who are supposed to represent rural Ireland, please spend more time engaging with the farming organisations who do have very legitimate concerns and who do know what they're talking about and know the facts and know the implications indeed of bad legislation. Indeed, my colleague Senator Victor Boyhan moved a number of amendments in the Seanad recently, seeking to have these deficiencies addressed. In total, Senator Boyhan moved 9 different amendments. Unfortunately, these were not accepted, which means that the concerns that farmers have are still present. And I mean, it is disappointing to see that rural senators from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael turn their backs here on farmers and on the farming organisations in respect to the amendments, as I say, that my independent colleague put forward. The IFA are also seeking challenges to the exemptions in Part 3 of the bill relating to water abstraction necessary for animal welfare purposes. Senator Boyhan also referred to this in the Seanad debate on the bill just last week. There he made it clear that the IFA has requested that this exemption be included because besides water availability, the quality of water has a direct impact on the welfare of animals. Therefore, livestock need to drink more water under heat stress than when forage conditions are poor. Overall, the IFA believes we need to do more to ensure the animal welfare aspect can be protected in order that we provide the highest quality produce to Irish customers and our trading partners. This here is the rationale, which I hope the Minister will accept. In the wider sense, there is also the perception that farmers are somehow not doing their fair share or not playing their part when it comes to protecting freshwater supply and surface and groundwater. I have repeatedly made it clear of my own dissatisfaction and with the whole narrative and indeed with the Environmental Protection Agency in that regard, that it is pointing the finger and almost putting the blame entirely on farmers, which is not the truth. Indeed, the EPA, in the latest focused on local authority environmental enforcement performance report, calls for increased inspections and greater enforcement of environmental regulations on farms. But this is despite the fact that the last year's quality report from the European Commission demonstrated clear signs of improved water quality improvement in Ireland. As I understand it from research by the IFA, the report shows improvements in 152 of the 726 water bodies that were prioritised areas for action in the WFD Water Basin Management Plan 2018 to 2021. In that context, the constant attack and criticism that farmers receive from the likes of the EPA amount to demonisation and can only add to the perception of farm families as environmental laggards, when nothing could be further from the truth. I'm aware that the EPA has placed Offaly among the 5 lowest performing local authorities, along with Mayo, Sligo, Wexford and Waterford, when it comes to enforcement and inspections. But I'm also aware, however, that farmers in Offaly move heaven and earth to ensure and nourish the land that they cherish, which provides their families with a living as increasingly difficult as that is. I'm sick and tired of agencies like the EPA pouring out this toxic and incorrect perception of farmers when it comes to environmental ambition. Where is the sense of proportion or balance or indeed fact? As I say, the EPA are now asking for increased inspections and higher levels of enforcement, as if farmers were routinely engaged in bad environmental practices and were just getting away with it because of a lax regime. Nothing could be further from the truth, because farmers are the most highly regulated people of any profession. Indeed, the regulatory burden of the new CAP programme makes that explicitly clear. Ministers, farmers will gladly work with a regulatory system that is fair and proportional and takes their genuine needs into account. They cannot operate within a system that does not reflect the experience of operating a farm, where the water abstraction needs that inevitably arise are not catered for in a prudent and responsible manner. And just to say also, on a final note, it would serve the EPA better to have a look at Irish Water and where Irish Water as a regulatory body is falling down in terms of infrastructure, poor sewerage infrastructure, which is also causing problems and which is a problem in my own constituency and was regularly reported to Irish Water. There are housing developments where there are significant and ongoing issues, so it would serve them better to look at that instead of demonising farming families. Garv Magat.